Inspired by the radical hospitality of Jesus Christ, Pine Street Church welcomes all of God's children into the life of the church, regardless of gender identity, age, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, physical limitation, educational background, or economic situation. We embrace everyone. We are a spiritual community of unconditionality. We accept everyone and we mean it. We believe in acceptance without exception. We also seek to inspire life. We believe in our human potential to be astonished about the beauty in our lives and to experience abundance. The spark of the divine is in everybody, and we believe in setting it free. Finally, we strive to create more. Each of us was born to be a creator of beauty, kindness, equality, gentleness, joy. As imitators of our original Creator, we too have the opportunity to create. Thank you for joining us today for our remote worship hybrid edition. As we inch closer to a return to our physical building for in-person worship this fall, we invite you to join together in this sacred digital space from wherever you are as we continue to be the church scattered rather than the church gathered. May you find hope and joy, love and meaning, and challenge and inspiration today. Welcome to Pine Street Church.
Looking out into the ocean, this boy in a boat that I am. Through the haze I can catch a glimpse of the damage that's been done. Miles like minutes they pass as I roll, and I count them in my head. Further and further I seem to go from this home that I once made. Raise the anchor, raise these tired hands. With no direction and my pockets full of sand, I'm over my head. First few days of this journey, friends and strangers came aboard my ship, until the gifts of their passing crowded my quarters with gold. I've got no room for them anymore, for I fear I might go under. My anchor's tangled in weeds down below as I hear the distant thunder calling me. I raise the question that's in front of me. Clear as the sun I feel through the haze I never see. I'm over my head on the crazy ocean. I'm over my head on the stormy sea. I'm over my head with a clear commotion. I'm over my head and it's killing me. I raise my bow to the winds that blow. I face the storm face to face as I know she's banging hard on my cabin door. So I face my fear face to face once more. She's in front of me. She's in front of me. But then she's gone for just a while. And I'm crying
And so today I'm curious, when was there a time in your life where you felt like you were in way over your head? A time when anxiety and adrenaline and maybe panic were the captains of your ship, and you felt like things were so dire and desperate that you'd never make it out alive. Truth be told, we've all had our fair share of adventures and misadventures. Like Joe Curran writing this week for Patagonia about his lifelong lessons learned from his legendary waterman dad, Pat Curran. He writes, "We had plenty of misadventures, sleeping outside in northern Baja in sub-zero temps in a subpar sleeping bag, a bad case of sunstroke in Scorpion Bay, white-knuckling driving with buses passing on blind corners, the hood of our car flying open as a semi-truck blew past, and a couple close calls on precipitous mountain roads." Or, as singer-songwriter Martin Sexton writes through a song called "Over My Head" that you'll hear in a few minutes, lyrics go like this: "I'm over my head on the crazy ocean. I'm over my head on the stormy sea. I'm over my head with a clear commotion. I'm over my head and it's killing me. I'll raise my bow to the winds that blow, face the storm, face to face as I know. She's banging hard on my cabin door. I face my fear face to face. And what's more, she's in front of me. And then she's gone for just a while. And I'm crying. I'm over my head." All sorts of realities can make us feel like we're drowning and going under, in way over our heads. You probably have your own list: divorce, illness, the death of a parent, the death of a child, the loss of a job, depression, middle school math, a global health pandemic. So many griefs and changes and challenges that can leave us feeling like we're in an old wooden rickety boat in the middle of the ocean. Surely it's enough to make us feel some sympathy today for these scared disciples on the open sea as we read about it in the Gospel of Mark. They're on their very own misadventure with their father figure and mentor and teacher, and it's a chaotic mess. Now, for the disciples, this was not their maiden voyage by any stretch. After all, some of these guys had been professional fishermen. They had seen these storms before. But who's not going to be scared when hurricane-force winds are tearing the sails, water is filling the boat, and the only one who could do anything about it is snoring in the stern? They were trapped in a storm cell, and there they were. Windblown and waterlogged and sleep-deprived, a storm that kept them up. Did you notice this in the text? At night. When evening came, Mark says. Now, all kinds of things keep us up nights, leaving us wondering if Jesus has gone to sleep on us. So, you get up, you go to the kitchen, turn on the lights, fire up your smartphone, or throw on Netflix to decide on the next show to binge watch, because we know all too well that riding in the eye of a hurricane is more than just a boat ride on a stormy day. Sometimes the storms we feel are inside of us rather than around us. To say Jesus calmed this storm on the Sea of Galilee doesn't give us much comfort until we come to know that Jesus has the power to calm the storms of our very own real human lives. Today's text again says, when evening came, when it was night. When evening comes, we don't want to be alone. Alone in our worries and anxieties and emotional storms. Dark nights of the soul come in many shades of gray. And sometimes it's more than just sleepless nights. Some of you know what it's really like to want to sleep through the day in your ocean of sheets and pillows. It's almost impossible for you to imagine light when you just feel like you're in a gray fog all the time. It's a kind of spiritual hurricane of the mind and soul. It's a kind of chaos we try to control like disciples in a sinking boat. Depression is an illness we might call a storm we work so hard to fight until finally we have to give up and go wake up Jesus in our own ways. Depression can rock your boat and wreck your nerves, but we try to keep it together, don't we? We try to manage it so we eat more or drink more or sleep more. And you go through the motions, and it's like nobody's looking. Some days, not even God. Some of you listening and watching today may suffer silently. You struggle to keep it together on those days you feel like you've slowly floated far out to sea. The wind is whipping your boat and the oars are about to snap. Here's the thing, though. Listen to this. The opening verse of the Bible reads, "Now the earth was a formless void. There was darkness over the deep, and God's Spirit hovered over the water." This verse describes a present state of affairs, not only a past event of God at creation. And when we open up to God and to others about our Mississippi River of anxieties and sins and worries, we begin to let the Spirit of God hover over the chaos and darkness of our being, here and now. We do not have to hide our inner chaos from God or from others we love and trust. We're often so trained that we think it wrong to really say what we feel because we don't want to be self-loathing, don't want to be a burden on someone else, but to express our feelings and thoughts freely before God, just as Jesus was and just as we are, is to trust that God is big enough to take our truth, no matter how afraid and out of sorts we may be. Even fearing for our lives, as the disciples are in today's story. They feel overwhelmed. How many of you have felt overwhelmed? It's been awfully easy to feel this over the last 15 months, right? That sort of, well, when it rains, it pours thing. The pandemic storm that we've been living through is starting to let up. Vaccines are here. The sea is starting to calm again. The sun is starting to peek from behind the clouds again. I mean, God, we've lived through a time of so many unknowns, unemployment, food insecurity impacting our fellow brothers and sisters and citizens, even here in our Boulder community. And we have felt weary and scared sometimes, wondering how in the hell we would ever weather the COVID-19 storm in the first place. Social isolation, a steady stream of breaking news, and a sense of how little control we have over a whole lot. Where can we find what is sturdy and steady in a time when we're still living in a tsunami of scarcity and a hurricane of political hysteria on the right or the left, and one pandemic storm like nothing we've known in 103 years, and a racial pandemic storm we've tragically known forever and that goes on? Now, yesterday commemorated the 156th anniversary of Juneteenth, when Union troops arrived in Galveston, Texas, declaring the abolition of slavery 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation and 2 months after the end of the Civil War. And as of this week, Juneteenth is a national holiday. The essayist and novelist, and a man who always reflected on his experience as a black man in white America, James Baldwin. He would have turned 97 years old recently, this past year. He once wrote, "History is not the past, it is the present. We carry our history with us. We are our history." And one more, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. There it is. And here we are, having faced a forecast of so many unknowns due to COVID-19, facing also the social and political upheaval we have found ourselves in, and we are facing, my friends, responsibilities as a church. What is church going to be like after this storm? Where are the winds of God's Spirit going to blow next as we learn afresh what it means to be the church as this pandemic storm passes? It's a question that guides us today as we share with our fellow Pineheads here in a few minutes our answer to this question. Living through the past year of the pandemic, what have you learned about the church? What have you learned about the church? It's sort of like a yard sign I saw last week while driving back home after hacking some golf balls at the driving range. It said, "Going back to normal is not enough." Going back to normal is not enough. What is it that we have learned about the church that we want to carry forward as we make a new world beyond the pandemic? Poet Mary Oliver writes about life after Jesus calmed the stormy sea. I think it's apropos for where we are today, moving through the stormy seas of the last 15 months. She says soon enough after that scary event, the disciples would get restless and cranky again, maybe forgetting what they had just been through. And she writes specifically in her poem called Maybe these lines: "Sweet Jesus, talking his melancholy madness, stood up in the boat and the sea lay down, silky and sorry, so everybody was saved that night. But you know how it is when something different crosses the threshold. Maybe after the sermon, after the multitude was fed, one or two of them felt the soul slip forth like a tremor of pure sunlight before exhaustion that wants to swallow everything, gripped their bones and left them miserable and sleepy as they are now, forgetting how the wind tore at the sails before he rose and talked to it, tender and luminous and demanding as he always was, 1,000 times more frightening than the killer sea." This is to say that even after the storm passed and things were more like normal again, they still have Jesus with them. And they ask, who then is this? Who is this tender and luminous and demanding Jesus we have here with us? I have to say I'm taken by that line, something different has crossed the threshold. And what does it mean about how we need to change because of it? Truth is, we get so attached to what we know. We feel threatened by change sometimes, even when it's meant for our good and for our growth. It reminds me of a cartoon a friend of mine sent recently that has a church committee sitting around a table with the pastor. And the caption says, "We're hoping you'll lead us on a journey of transformation without requiring any real changes." Precisely. Surely this was the disciples' message to Jesus too, as they slowly learned that this guy was more than even they thought he was. Or better yet, that their expectations of him were different than who he really was and what he came to show them. Even, and maybe especially, after a storm that threatened their very lives. My friends, today it's true that Jesus does not always make our circumstances easy. Just ask the disciples. But there is a power with Jesus that helps us rest easy in the middle of it all. And the miracle of it all is that Jesus was sleeping through the storm. He's a picture of peace. Jesus asleep on the feather pillow is not a case of negligence or uncaring. It is a case of someone who is serene, at peace inside his skin. Someone might call that grace. We can't storm-proof our lives any more than we can control the path of a hurricane. But we can bank on some things God is always saying to you and me. One of them is the constant whisper, peace. Be still. Into the nonsense and the chaos and the downpours of our lives, God still speaks. Be courageous. Let's go on to the other side. You don't have to live afraid. Peace, be still. The power of God's love is a power that opposes the forces of chaos that would drown out peace with fear. And in your world, maybe this is your world, full of sleepless nights over things you cannot control, what would it mean to trust the one who puts a hand on your shoulder and asks you, why are you afraid? Why are you afraid? It's a voice that bids us to go across to the other side. And whether it's the Sea of Galilee or the Boulder Reservoir or a storm surge in your own life, the miracle happens to us when we come to know the kind of peace that kept Jesus sleeping through the storm. Every once and so often, when it's least expected, we can feel a wave of peace wash over us. Sometimes it is a profound gratitude that we can't find words to explain. It can surprise you suddenly while you are driving in your car. It can wash over you when you're Zooming with your kids, or you're having your morning coffee in the kitchen, or an evening bike ride at sunset, or reading a book that you're infatuated with, or a scene of your favorite show when it makes you laugh or makes you cry. And you can see it again, from a poet's point of view, like a verse from David White. When we finally step out of the boat toward them, we find everything holds us, and everything confirms our courage. And if you wanted to drown, you could, but you don't, because finally, after all this struggle and all these years, you simply don't want to anymore. You've simply had enough of drowning, and you want to live, and you want to love, and you will walk across any territory and any darkness, however fluid and however dangerous, to take the one hand you know belongs in yours. Amen.